Hey guys, so we're going to do another video today. Um, so to start off, God has a lot of names. We've covered a couple of them in previous videos. Um, I've said some of them. Um, one of them, or a couple of them, uh, that you may not be familiar with are He's called the Chief of Cornerstone, Son of the Blessed, Counselor, Wonderful, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace, Emmanuel, Faithful and True, and Friend. Another one that's going to be the main topic of today is the Carpenter. So in Mark chapter 6, verses 1 through 6, I'm going to read it from my Bible. If you want to read along, you can. Um, he left and returned to his hometown. His disciples came along. On the Sabbath, he gave a lecture in the meeting place. He made a real hit, impressing everyone. We had no idea he was this good, they said. How did he get so wise all of a sudden? Get such ability? But in the next breath, and my version says they were cutting him down. He's just a carpenter, Mary's boy. We've known him since he was a little kid. We know his brothers, James, Justus, Jude, and Simon, and his sisters. Who does he think he is? They tripped over what little they knew about him and fell, sprawling. And they never got any farther than that right there. Jesus told them, a prophet has little honor in his hometown, among his relatives. On the streets he played in as a child. Jesus wasn't able to do much of anything there. He laid hands on a few sick people and healed them. That's all. He couldn't get over their stubbornness. He left and made a circuit of the other villages, teaching. So why a carpenter? Why not a farmer or a fisherman? Why would he choose to be a carpenter for most of his life? Why would God want his son to be a carpenter and be known for being a carpenter? Because he was born in a carpenter's home. When Jesus returned to where he grew up, Nazareth, just a little village surrounded by mountains, and he began teaching, they were astonished. In Matthew's account in chapter 13, verses 54 through 56, he taught them in their synagogue, so that they were astonished and said, where did this man get this wisdom and these mighty works? Is this not the carpenter's son? Is not his mother called Mary? Where did this man get all of these things? We sometimes forget that Jesus had half brothers and half sisters. Don't you know, growing up in that home had its challenges? How would you feel if one day your parents sat you down and told you that your brother was God? But when the time came, he left Nazareth to begin his teaching ministry. And in Mark 6, he's returned to the village he grew up in, where he went to school, where he practiced his trade as a carpenter. And then he showed up at the synagogue where he grew up in and began teaching. People started saying, hey, that's the man who made my kitchen table, who made the beds for my children. And verse 3 says they were offended at him. Now, why would these people be offended at him? Well, according to the custom of that day, The firstborn son followed the trade of his father. Like any Jewish boy at age 3, his father begin singing psalms to him. At age 5, he would begin learning Leviticus and the law. 10, he would have the Torah memorized. 13, there would be a bar mitzvah in his honor, recognizing that he had entered into manhood, and then he would become an apprentice to his father to learn his father's trade. For most of his life on earth, Jesus was a village carpenter. He lived among common people. He knew them by name, could identify with them. I mean, growing up, he was one of them. He ate with them, laughed with them, worked for them. For that reason, he could identify with them. Along with having a trade came respect. Jesus was a man's man. He was a carpenter. And being a carpenter in Nazareth meant he not only lived among them and served among them, he was respected among them. With his own hands, with his own 2 hands, Jesus would have made the tables and chairs and benches, beds that were in the homes all across Nazareth. Many a man in Nazareth would have come to his carpenter shop. Being a carpenter meant that not did he live among them, but he served among them. Yes, he lived among them, served among them, and was respected among them. Listen to Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15. For we do not have a high priest who cannot sympathize with our weakness, but was in all points tempted as we are, yet without sin. Jesus knows how we feel. He understands rejection, disappointment, hurts, and sorrow. And when you experience rejection and disappointment, hurt and sorrow, you need somebody who can identify you and help you through it. And that's who Jesus is. And let me say that again, because it's kind of just like the video that we did this morning with worry. You know, Jesus lived among us back in that time. So he had the same thing. It sounds right in my head. It's just kind of hard getting it out there, guys. Sorry. But that's why he's a carpenter. Because he was born in a carpenter's home. Because he came to do a carpenter's work. That's what we're going to talk about next. So what is the work of a carpenter? A carpenter is one who builds things and repairs things. Jesus is the master builder. Let me tell you a little bit of his work. So for this, I'm not going to recite the verses. I'm just going to tell you the verses. You can go and look them up yourself. He has built the universe. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. We all know that verse. We've all known that verse growing up in church, growing up in general. We all know that verse. John chapter 1, verses 1 through 3. He's building a home for us. John chapter 14, verse 2. He's building his church. Matthew chapter 16, verse 18. He's building lives. John 10, verse 10. Who may have life? Those who surrender their lives into the hands of the master builder. Those who are being conformed into the image of his son. Is your life being built by the master carpenter? That's a good question. Question that I will give my answer later. Doing the carpenter's work means being the one who builds, but not only builds, who repairs. He not only came to create the new, he came to repair the old. Years ago, he created me anew, and thousands of times since then, he's repaired my life. Perhaps today your life is in pieces. Perhaps there is a piece of your marriage over here, or a piece of your friendship over there, a splinter over here, and a garment over there. When you bring the wreckage of your life with all the broken pieces to Jesus, he can repair them. For as the carpenter, he not only creates the new, but he repairs the old. That's why they called him a carpenter. He uses the carpenter's method. And the method, you look at raw material and you see, okay, what can I do with this? What is the potential of this? Jesus sees the potential in your life. You may not see it, but he does. That's what carpenters do. He has a plan to turn your potential into something special. If you had asked me 10 years ago if I thought I would be sitting here right now leading a life group and, you know, being married, gone through the things that I've gone through, no, I couldn't have told you that 10 years ago. But he sees the potential for my life and he's repaired my life. After seeing potential, he has a blueprint. He has a plan. Jeremiah 29, verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans for wholeness and not for evil, to give you a future and a hope. So we all know from the starting point of our lives, God has a plan for us. What we need is to surrender to his plan and stop fighting it. When we place our life into his hands, he then goes to work creating a masterpiece, something beautiful. So, this goes back to a song my mom sang or tried to sing 10 years ago, 11 years ago now. Wow, 11 years ago. Yeah. When I graduated from high school, everybody does those whole high school, yay, you're graduating from high school. It's a great thing. You get recognized at church and stuff like that. My mom sang this song, or tried to sing this song by Sandy Patty called Masterpiece. And I tell you what, I'll go ahead and include that video at the end of this video so y'all can listen to it because it really ties into what we're talking about here. Philippians chapter 1, verse 6. Being confident of this very thing, that he who has begun a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. Reason number 4, he's called the carpenter. Because he died a carpenter's death. And this is kind of hard for me to... I'm getting all emotional here, guys. Peter chapter 2, verse 24. He himself who bore our sins in his own body on the tree, that we, having died to sins, might live for righteousness, by whose stripes you were healed. The word bore means to carry as a sacrifice. Jesus bore our sins. When the day that he was crucified, the day that he died on the cross, he carried that cross on his back. That cross resembles our sins. He bore our sins. Jesus took the blame for our sins. The sinless one took the blame for the sins of the world. He not only took the blame for our sins, he paid the penalty for our sins. The word tree, the Greek word tree, literally means wood, a piece of wood, anything made of wood. Jesus died a carpenter's death, taking the tools of a carpenter, a hammer, nails, and wood, and was crucified on our behalf. So, like I said a minute ago, I'll post that video. I really liked this little sermon that I read from. His name, the guy that I got it from, his name is Dr. Ernest L. Easley, and I'll cite it. I'll put his information down in the description, so we all know who it's from. If y'all have any questions about what we just read, I'll email it. I can email it to you. I can forward it to you. Uh, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about, I'm taking from different books, articles. There's a lot of resources out there, a ton of resources out there, guys, that we have access to, that we can take and kind of put in our words, read from, and cite the author, and that's what I'm doing. Um, and I'll give my personal thoughts on it. But if y'all have any questions or anything, let me know, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Y'all have a good day, okay?